The snow had started falling before sunset. By midnight, the roads through Black Hollow were drowned in silver frost and silence. The forest surrounding the old mountain town stood still beneath the moonlight, dark pine branches hanging heavy with ice. No animals moved, no wind dared breathe through those woods, because something older than winter lived there. A small figure stumbled through the trees barefoot, her tiny white nightgown soaked at the hem. She couldn't have been older than 7. Dark curls stuck to her cheeks, and her pale blue eyes darted wildly through the shadows behind her. She was running out of breath. Behind her came the sounds, branches cracking, low growls, laughter, not human laughter. "Please," she whimpered, tears freezing against her skin. "Please don't hurt me." The creatures following her moved impossibly fast between the trees, tall silhouettes with glowing crimson eyes and sharpened smiles. Vampires, not the elegant kind from stories told in warm taverns, but starving predators with skin like corpses and mouths wet with hunger. One of them landed on a fallen log ahead of her with unnatural grace. "Well now," the vampire hissed, "what do we have here?" The little girl froze. Another appeared behind her. Then another. 3 of them circled her slowly. "She smells strange," one muttered. "Half blood," another sneered. "Filthy thing." The tallest vampire crouched in front of her, claws lifting her chin. "But she'll still bleed." The child trembled violently, but not entirely from fear. Her skin was ice-cold to the touch, her heartbeat weak, different. The vampire opened his jaws, and his head vanished. Blood sprayed across the snow. The body dropped lifelessly beside her. The forest went silent. A man stood between the trees, holding a blackened steel sword coated in dark crimson. He wore a long ash-gray coat, snow gathering on his shoulders, his expression unreadable beneath tired amber eyes. The remaining vampires snarled. "Hunter!" one screamed. The man said nothing. They rushed him together. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. Steel flashed once, twice. 3 bodies hit the ground. The little girl stared in horror and awe as the stranger cleaned his blade against his sleeve. His movements were calm, practiced, like killing monsters was as natural as breathing. He finally looked down at her. "You hurt?" She shook her head slowly. The man knelt, noticing immediately how cold she was. Not winter cold, dead cold. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What's your name?" "Lillian." "You out here alone, Lillian?" Her lip trembled. "Mama's sick." The hunter looked toward the distant edge of the forest, where faint candlelight flickered through trees. "She told me to hide," Lillian whispered. "But they found me." The man stood quietly for a moment. Most hunters would have walked away right there, a child cold as death. Vampires hunting her specifically. There was only one explanation. But then the little girl grabbed his hand, her tiny fingers barely wrapped around 2 of his. "Please," she begged softly, "you have to save Mama." The hunter looked down at her. For reasons he didn't understand, he sighed. "Show me." The cabin sat hidden deep within the mountains, isolated beneath layers of pine and snow. Its windows glowed dim orange against the storm. The hunter stepped inside cautiously. The smell hit him first. Blood. Not fresh, old, controlled, contained. Lillian hurried past him. "Mama!" A woman lay weakly in bed near the fire, blankets wrapped tightly around her thin frame. She looked pale beyond reason. Dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Sweat covered her forehead. But it wasn't illness in the human sense. The hunter knew immediately. The woman looked up sharply when she saw him. Fear entered her eyes, not predatory fear, protective fear. "Lillian," she whispered weakly, "what did you do?" "He saved me," the girl said quickly. "The ferals found me." The woman's face drained further. She looked at the hunter with quiet dread. "You should leave." Instead, he stepped closer and noticed the untouched animal carcass near the hearth. Drained, controlled feeding. No human victims. Interesting. Then he saw it clearly. The woman's eyes, not fully red, not fully human either. And suddenly, everything made sense. The child's cold skin, the strange scent, the vampires calling her half-blood. The hunter rested one hand on the hilt of his sword. "You're a vampire." The woman closed her eyes. "Yes." Lillian immediately stepped between them. "No," she cried. "Mama's good. She doesn't hurt people." The hunter didn't move. The woman looked ashamed, more than dangerous. "She's right," she said quietly. "I haven't fed from a human in years." "Then why are they hunting you?" Her silence answered enough. But eventually she spoke. "Because my daughter shouldn't exist." The room fell still, except for the crackling fire. The hunter frowned. The woman looked toward Lillian with painful tenderness. Her father was human. Even the hunter's expression shifted slightly. Half-human children were myths among vampire clans, forbidden by ancient laws. Seen as abominations by pureblood houses, most were killed at birth. The woman's voice shook. "They found us 3 months ago. We've been running since." Lillian climbed into the bed beside her mother, clutching her tightly. The hunter watched carefully. The child had warmth in her eyes, compassion, fear, a heartbeat, but also the unnatural stillness of something not fully mortal. 2 worlds trapped in one soul. The woman suddenly winced in agony. The hunter noticed the trembling in her hands. Starvation. Severe. "You're dying," he said. "I know. Why not feed?" She laughed bitterly. "On who? Travelers? Innocents?" Her eyes hardened weakly. "I would rather die than let my daughter watch me become a monster." The hunter stood silent, then slowly removed one glove. The woman noticed immediately. "No." He ignored her. With a small blade, he cut across his wrist. Fresh blood spilled down his hand. Lillian stared wide-eyed. The scent filled the cabin instantly. The vampire woman's eyes turned crimson, painfully crimson. She turned away immediately. "I said no. You'll die otherwise. That's not your problem." The hunter extended his wrist anyway. "Take it." Her breathing became ragged. "You don't understand what you're offering." "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Among vampires, willingly offering blood carried ancient meaning. It was not submission, not ownership. It was an oath, free will given freely, a sacred law older than kingdoms. To force blood from someone was feeding. To be offered blood willingly was trust, protection, peace. The woman stared at him in disbelief. "Why?" The hunter looked toward Lillian. The little girl was trying not to cry, and something inside him, something long buried beneath years of killing monsters, cracked quietly. "Because she deserves better than this world." The woman's eyes softened. Slowly, carefully, she took his wrist. Her fangs pierced his skin. Pain shot through his arm, but he didn't pull away. The cabin became deathly silent, except for her drinking. Not greedily, not violently, just enough. When she finally released him, her breathing steadied almost instantly. Color returned faintly to her cheeks. And something else changed. The air itself felt different, ancient, binding. The woman looked horrified. "You invoked the law." The hunter wrapped his wrist calmly. "I know." Lillian blinked between them. "What law?" The vampire woman stared at the man as if seeing him for the first time. By offering blood, willingly to protect vampire and child alike, she whispered, you invoked the oath of free will. The hunter remained silent. The woman's voice trembled. No vampire may harm you now. Outside the cabin, the forest suddenly erupted with screams. Dozens of distant shrieks echoed through the mountains. The old laws were spreading. Every vampire in Black Hollow now knew. The hunter had become protected under sacred covenant, untouchable. The woman looked at him carefully. You just changed your life forever. The hunter glanced toward the frightened little girl curled against her mother, then toward the storm outside. I think I did. The words barely left his mouth before another scream tore through the forest outside, closer this time. The hunter's faint smile disappeared instantly. The vampire woman sat upright in bed, despite her weakness. Her eyes sharpened toward the cabin walls. They found us. Lillian grabbed her mother's arm. The hunter walked toward the frost-covered window and peered outside into the storm. Shapes moved between the trees. Too many. Red eyes glowed in the darkness like embers beneath ash. Not ferals. These moved with discipline, purebloods. The woman's expression darkened with genuine fear. They sent the court. The hunter glanced back. You know them? Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. They rule the northern covens, ancient bloodlines. She swallowed hard. If they know the oath was invoked, they can't touch me, the hunter finished. Yes.
Seraphine didn't just tense, she froze. Every muscle in her body locked as if ice had been injected straight into veins. Her breath stopped entirely. Even Lillian felt the shift, the sudden terror radiating from her mother's still form. Lucien. That name alone carried weight like a death sentence. And then the door shook again with another thunderous thud that rattled dishes on, sent dust drifting down from ceiling beams. A calm, smooth voice called through wood, "Open the door, Seraphine." No shouting. No rage, just icy authority, like winter speaking through a perfect mouth. Lillian buried herself against her mother instantly, not understanding fully but feeling fear pulse between them like electric shock. Another hit. The wooden door cracked diagonally down center this time. Splinters gave way slightly under force of blow meant to break it open soon, whether they answered or not. Then came decree. By decree of the Crimson Court, the decree fell like a guillotine. The child is to be surrendered, no plea, no negotiation. Just cold, legal command from the Crimson Court, the ancient ruling body of vampire purebloods, their law absolute among kindred. Lillian pressed herself tighter into her mother's side, small hands clutching Seraphine's thin nightgown as if she could disappear into fabric and avoid what came next. Seraphine whispered, "No." Not loud, not defiant, just a broken denial, a mother refusing to believe this was happening. The hunter didn't move toward door yet, but his hand slid fully onto hilt of sword now, fingers curling around steel in silent readiness. He asked quietly, "What do they want with her?" And Seraphine answered with dread so deep it sounded like grief already lived. "She's proof." A pause. Then softer, "Proof that vampires and humans were never meant to remain divided." Her voice cracked on last word, as if saying it out loud made truth too real. Seraphine's explanation carried centuries of buried history. The old laws were created after centuries of war, she said, voice hushed. Separation kept peace. For generations, vampires and humans lived apart, bound by ancient treaties that forbade mixing bloodlines. Vampires ruled the night, humans dominated daylight. No alliances beyond necessity. But a half-vampire child? That shattered everything. Lillian wasn't just an accident. She was living rebellion, a living symbol that their kindred separation could be broken, and purebloods would never allow it to stand. Outside, the crunching footsteps grew closer. More figures now, at least 6 or 7 surrounding cabin in perfect silence. Lucien spoke again, his tone eerily calm, almost gentle compared to what he'd just declared. "You've already broken one sacred law. Don't force us to spill blood under another. No threats yet. Just quiet ultimatum. Surrender the child or face consequences." The hunter studied Seraphine's face then, as if reading her soul through eyes alone. The hunter's question hung in the air, simple, direct. "You trust him?" And Seraphine answered with a laugh that held no humor, just bitterness, pain, a past too heavy to name. Lucien was once my brother. Not his, not my sibling, past tense, once family, now enemy by law and bloodline decree. That explained everything. The restraint in Lucien's voice, the lack of immediate violence outside despite his authority as Crimson Court enforcer. He hadn't burned Cabin down yet. Hadn't sent ferals rushing inside screaming for Lillian's death. No, this was civilized execution, cold protocol from pure-blood aristocracy doing their duty. Then came silence again, thick enough to choke on. Until... crack! The door split down the middle with a sharp, splintering crack. Wood exploding inward as wind howled through gap vengeful spirit. Snow and icy air rushed into warm cabin, extinguishing part of fire instantly. Flames sputtered, then died slightly from sudden draft. 6 figures stepped through in eerie silence, pale faces unlined by time or weather, black coats pristine despite snow outside, crimson eyes glowing faintly in dark, a color not quite red but deeper, blood-dark ember light, and at center, Lucien, tall, elegant, flawlessly composed, not a single strand of silver hair out of place despite storm raging beyond walls. No fangs bared, no growl or rage on his face, just terrifying calm, the kind that came from centuries-old power held perfectly under control. His gaze swept over scene. Sick vampire woman clinging to child, hunter standing between them with sword half drawn. And most damning, the hunter's wrist, fresh cut, still oozing blood onto floorboards. Lucien saw it all at once, and his expression shifted. Recognition flashed in Lucien's eyes, sharp, immediate. A vampire of his age and status would know the significance of a hunter offering blood. The oath wasn't just kindness, it was sacred law, an ancient pact between predator and prey that hadn't been invoked in generations. A human willingly bleeding for a vampire, not force-fed, not hunted, offered. And Lucien, noble enforcer of Crimson Court, understood exactly what it meant. You invoked the oath, he said quietly, not angry, but cold as grave dirt. The hunter didn't respond with words, just silence, the weight behind his stillness speaking volumes. Lucien stepped further into cabin, boots clicking softly on wooden floorboards as snow melted beneath him. The hunter's answer was simple, defiant in its quiet honesty. I saved a mother. No pride, no justification beyond that single truth. Lucien didn't flinch, but something dark passed through his crimson eyes, a flicker of disdain, maybe even disgust. You endangered 2 species, he corrected coldly, voice like ice cracking over black water. Not just the vampire race, not just humans either. Both. Breaking ancient laws that keep balance between predator and prey for centuries, Lillian shrank further into Seraphine, small body trembling as Lucien's gaze shifted to her, and for a heartbeat his expression changed. It wasn't rage anymore, wasn't hatred, just sorrow, regret. And then came the words that cut deeper than any blade. You should have killed her at birth, directed straight at Seraphine, a declaration from pure-blood court enforcer. This child shouldn't exist. The room froze. No sound, no breath. Not even the dying fire dared crackle now. In less than a heartbeat, the hunter had moved. 1 second, he was standing beside Seraphine and Lillian. The next, his sword pressed flat against Lucien's throat. Steel cold as winter frost, edge biting just slightly into pale skin without drawing blood, yet every vampire in the cabin hissed instantly, low, animalistic growls rising from 6 throats at once. Purebloods bristled like wolves sensing threat to their alpha. But Lucien? He didn't flinch. Not a muscle twitched. Not a single crimson eye blinked in surprise or anger. Instead, he smiled, a small, icy curve of lips that held no warmth at all. You're very brave for a human, he said softly, as if complimenting rather than threatening back. Lucien's smile was quiet, almost pitying, not mocking, not smug, just knowing, like a scholar watching someone misread ancient text. You truly don't understand the oath yet. Spoken with such certainty that it didn't sound like an insult, more like stating obvious fact to child who'd picked up knife without being taught how to use it. The hunter frowned, slightly, but enough for tension in his jawline to show beneath stoic mask. He knew the oath existed, knew vampires saw blood gift as sacred bond between predator and prey, but he hadn't thought about consequences beyond keeping Seraphine alive long enough for Lillian's safety. Behind him, the 6 vampire enforcers remained frozen, their hisses dying down but bodies coiled tight, ready at Lucien's slightest signal. Lucien's pale hand lifted, just slightly, fingers barely moving, and the effect was instant. All 6 vampire enforcers stepped back in perfect unison. Not a single one disobeyed, no growl, no protest. They didn't even look at the hunter anymore. Elias retreated like soldiers dismissing themselves from battlefield on command. "The old laws bind us stronger than hunger," Lucian said calmly, the weight of centuries in his tone. "You offered blood willingly in defense of innocent life, sacred intent, purest form of oath invocation there was. And by ancient vampire decree? That made Hunter untouchable now. For as long as Covenant held, no pureblood under Crimson Court could harm him without breaking oldest laws written into their very kindred nature." The hunter exhaled, subtle relief flashing through amber eyes before he masked it again with stoicism. But then Lucian turned gaze toward Lillian, and everything shifted again. The silence that followed Lucian's question was absolute. No wind, no breath, not even the creak of wood beneath feet, just pure, suspended stillness, as if entire world had paused to hear this hunter's answer. "You would die for them?" Not mocking, not challenging, just genuinely asking. And the hunter didn't hesitate, didn't calculate or consider consequences. Yes, one word, flat tone, but heavier than boulder dropped from mountain peak. Everyone reacted differently. The 6 enforcers exchanged glances. This human means it? Seraphine stared with wide eyes, something fragile breaking inside her gaze. Even Lucian looked slightly surprised, for a split second before his aristocratic mask slid back into place. The hunter himself seemed briefly unsettled by how easily truth came out, and bowed his head just slightly. Not a full submission, not groveling or fear, but respect. A pureblood of the Crimson Court acknowledging a human's name, and the oath that bound him under protection now. That was no small gesture, especially from someone as powerful and cold as Lucian. "Elias," he said, voice quieter this time, almost formal, "you carry the protection of ancient law now. No vampire under Crimson Court could harm him, not attack, not even threaten without violating centuries-old covenant written in blood and oath." The hunter, the man who had been nameless to them moments ago, now stood shielded by oldest rules among kindred. Then came command, simple, firm. "Leave." No anger behind it, just finality. But Lucian didn't move right away. Instead, his crimson eyes darkened with something unreadable. Lucian's words carried weight that made the very air feel heavier, like storm clouds pressing down on roof. "But others will, not a threat, a warning, one delivered with grim certainty." Then came revelation, cold ancient truth no one in cabinet expected to hear tonight. There were things older than Crimson Court, older than vampire kingdoms, even older than vampires themselves. Seraphine's breath caught, her face drained of all color. "No," she whispered, not denial, but pure terror. Lucian didn't look at her, just kept speaking calmly, as if discussing weather rather than something that could unravel reality. "The Hollow King knows she lives." That name alone, Hollow King, sent visible ripple through room. 6 enforcers stiffened further. Their crimson eyes flickered with something close to primal fear. Even fire seemed to shrink back from hearth. The name hung in the air like a curse. The first vampire, spoken by Seraphine, not in myth or legend tone, but as fact, like someone naming God they both feared and knew was real. And the moment she said it, everything stopped. No wind, no rustling trees, not even snow falling outside. The storm itself seemed to pause, frozen mid-breath. An unnatural silence swallowed mountain whole, not peaceful quiet, but dead silence, the kind that made ears ring with absence of sound. That from deep within forest, a sound came. Not animal, not human, something else entirely. Low at first, a vibration more than noise, felt through floorboards rather than heard. Like earth itself had exhaled. The first heartbeat was deafening. Boom! Not loud, no, it wasn't a sound that came through ears. It vibrated, through bones, through blood, like something colossal had just pulsed in the dark heart of forest. An entire mountain felt it. Cabin walls trembled. Dishes rattled on shelves. Even fire leapt unnaturally high for a split second, as if startled. Lillian whimpered. A tiny, frightened noise pressed into her mother's shoulder. Then came the second. Boom! Closer this time. So close now that trees didn't just shake, they bent, bowing toward source like subjects before king. And Lucian? For first time since entering, his perfect calm shattered. A flicker of true alarm crossed his aristocratic face just for half-second, but Elias saw it clearly. Pure-blood enforcer who hadn't flinched at blade to throat was afraid now. Lucian exhaled sharply. "We're out of time." Lucian's gaze locked onto Elias, crimson eyes burning with intensity that had nothing to do with vampire power, and everything to do with urgency. Now? He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Every word carried weight of impending doom. And then he asked, not commanded, offered choice. "Now you decide whether you're merely a hunter," a pause, heavy as tombstone, or her guardian. Not just protector, not just defender for tonight, but guardian in permanent sense. A vow beyond law or oath, something deeper than blood gift or crimson court decree. Lillian stared at them from Seraphine's arms, wide-eyed but silent, waiting too without understanding full meaning yet.